I'm so excited for you to join me today, Verity. Uh, I've known your mother for some time,
Mm,
but you have virtually, but you have been fighting DSRCT for 9 years.
hmm.
And I'm so grateful that you're willing to share your story with our community.
Of course. Yeah. No, I mean, it's still crazy to me to hear 9 years as well, especially like it has just been like a constant battle apart from I think the earlier years were almost easier. Like not knowing, like having a barrier to an understanding of what to face, and then like just having that learning curve constantly happen is pretty mental. And then yeah, so like nearing a decade, especially when you have all of the things that they lay out time frames, like 5 years, and then you make it to that, and then you think, but it's not a curative perspective, we're not doing a curative route, so 5 years suddenly means nothing, but then it's also a massive milestone. So the milestones are kind of crazy because everyone has their own individual ones, and I'm just kind of like, we'll just keep the ball rolling as long as we can, I think. But yeah.
Well, you had a big milestone this year also in that you had a golden birthday.
I did, and it's been extremely fun teaching everyone what a golden birthday is, because I've obviously made a massive thing about it. My mum has, like, it's been a big deal, like not just making it to my birthday, but having that, like, that was just completely unfathomable at one point. And especially when the way we celebrated, I was very lucky to speak at the Royal Albert Hall, and when part of my speech, which they've never had before, was asking him to sing happy birthday to me, but I had to obviously have the golden birthday thing rooted in the speech as like a very, like, the main core part of it, because otherwise it just sounds very arrogant going, it's been my birthday, sing happy birthday to me, because everyone else who's spoken prior in the years like before, they've not like done that, like even if it was their birthday. So it's been interesting telling everyone, and I felt very sorry for someone on the weekend when when they found out and they were like, oh, but mine was the first, like I'm the 1st of January, and I was like, well, you would have had no idea, like do you know what I mean, unless your parents are celebrating for you, you're one and done. So yeah, and then someone else was like, oh, I'm the 30th, I still have a good 2 years to plan. So
Well, so someone who's watching this maybe doesn't know what we're talking about. What
yeah,
is a golden birthday?
so golden birthday is when you turn the age of the date of the month that you're born. So mine was 26 on the 26th. And then I was just very lucky that I was a millennium baby. So I also had the added to like 2026. So it was kind of like an even bigger deal. So yeah, it was like a very quintessential birthday for me, and pretty mad. Looking back at cancer from a cancer perspective, not just the golden birthday, but 17, I 26 was unfathomable. Like I didn't even know I couldn't even age 26-year-olds back then. And now I still look at myself and think sometimes from like that 17-year-old mindset where I felt stunted, and look around me and my friends and think, oh yeah, we're all just really young. And then someone will come on TV, like a reality TV program or something, and they'll be like, oh, I'm 22 looking for love. And I'm like, 22? I'm like, excuse me? And I'm looking at them thinking, but I can't age you. Like, you look so much older, or like younger, or I don't know. It's again that like what life has thrown at you with experience and other things. And I have no idea how to age myself, because I've just had about 1,000 different personas, looks, like through no fault of my own. I have no idea. So it's been a weird year being 26 and kind of going, wow, look at me go. No idea, but yeah, we're rolling with it.
Well, I would age you as timeless. And
That's a compliment.
when I talk about my son's journey, I often say that he lived more in his 14 years than most people do in 70.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you also live a big, wide life, and that shows in your persona. So
thank you.
I would love for you to take us back to 17. You were, and maybe even before that, set the stage. Talk about what your life was like before you were diagnosed with cancer.
It's pretty intense actually, because a lot of stuff happened within the year leading up to being diagnosed with like family circumstances. So all my life I've been very, and again, like last year, when it's going to be an all over the place this journey, like this journey is like, from looking back, it just goes several different ways. But last summer I remember being in the garden and just having like a 2-hour meltdown, looking back at my life and thinking, God, you know, from like literally from when I was born all the way through, thinking what like how privileged I've been with different things. And, you know, my parents, when I asked to do something, they would try and make it happen. I tried gymnastics, I tried kickboxing, and like, you know, karate. And then I really liked sport and athletics, and it was kind of like every route was I kind of wanted to direct myself to, they directed me to as well. And that was kind of my life. It was kind of what, you know, what dreams or visions I had, or hobbies, just we went along with it, and it was really, really nice. And I had a nice friendship group, and everything was quite easy for me. I think going through school, I wasn't I like, you know, it's very typical, not someone that really wanted to go and bat against the teachers, but I definitely wasn't a goody two shoes. I was somewhere in the middle. I feel like that's me now still. I need to be a bit more direct and a bit more like, you know, actually, you know, this is what I feel, but in a polite way. And you're still figuring out that in school when you get, you know, sent out or whatever. But the year leading up was quite an important year. And you know, I still have no idea why I was like, why my cancer appeared. No, like, you know, we've the genetic testing, everything, you just have no idea what kind of sets it off. And sometimes I wonder whether it was stress, whether it was anxiety, like, you know, who knows what kind of body state those changes, you know, can be intense. And genuinely, who knows. So life was just really ordinary. And I just remember being you know, having a having a crush, and then making them my boyfriend, and then that's been my life partner since. I'm very lucky that they stuck by me. And there was a point, this is the problem, brain fog just comes and goes. There was a point I had to make about that. I remember being really, really anxious about what to do for my future. Like, you know, I was 17, we still had a year left of sixth form or college. And I remember being like, I have no idea what to do. It was really stressing me out. I didn't know what route I wanted to take, whether I wanted to uni, whether I wanted to take a gap year. And then cancer happened. And I do remember being like, this being a huge relief. It was almost kind of like, oh, okay, hold on a minute. I can just like this has happened now. This is what my focus is. I can't do both. And somehow I did do both. They kind of went together quite easily. Like I just went, I'm not going into college today. I'll do it from home. And that was where I was like, I can be more direct now. I can say I don't want to do this A level. I'm going to do half of it. Or it was kind of like, you know, what I needed, what I wanted happened. And that was good. And I think the only thing I feel that, yeah, maybe I was cheated out of going to uni in that opportunity, because once I've had cancer, there was absolutely no way I would have been able to go back. It would have felt like I'd had such a huge amount of perspective and life thrown at me that, like, you know, you never expect to get cancer at any age, but you certainly don't expect to get it that like in school before you've even had the chance to forge a career that you can go back to. Like I was kind of somewhere in the middle. I was like, do I go back? Do I go forward? Where am I? And uni was never an option to go back to. So I just kind of, ever since being diagnosed, opportunities have arisen, and I've grabbed them, or I've said, you know, I've gone, nope, that's not for me. And I've just kind of done that ever since with jobs or like other opportunities. You know, it's been a weirdly better life having had cancer than I think I would have, not that I would have had, than what I thought I would have had back then before I was diagnosed. Obviously now I don't have that anxiety. I'm not shrouded in the stress of what that year prior with my family situation had kind of like, you know, it was like a black cloud. So that person would have thought, you know, oh, cancer's like, oh, thank God, like that's taken it away. Whereas the rational part of me knows that this disease is awful. No one wants it, but it has given me so many joyful moments. So it's that balance. Like I have to be really grateful as well as really like angry at it. And it's such a hard thing to marry the two. And that's kind of what I've been practicing ever since I was 17. That's been like the education I've taken instead of uni, really, is just doing that in everything I do. Because there's not, otherwise my life is just ordinary. There's nothing really else to say prior to cancer. Everything that's kind of given me my personality or given me good has come is from it, which is really weird looking at it. I don't know if that's it's a good thing, but it's also like a horrible thing because I've been through so much crap.
A normal thing because you've done it for 9 years of your life, of your 26 years, right? So almost half of, at least a third of your life, you have been doing this. So of course it's going to be formative. But I think that is what you just said about kind of, you know, all teenagers kind of go into adulthood with this kind of heavy pressure of all the expectations of what they're going to do with their life. And the worst possible thing happened to you at a terrible young age, formative age, and you reframed it as, well, at least I was relieved of the burden of all that pressure. And that in itself is some pretty like high level coping, reframing, and wisdom, I think, because you're amazing. So I would love,
like you just said right then, it is that the reshaping of like, you know, of, again, with the perspective, when that word's going to get thrown around so much, because it is you if you don't reframe, you just that is impossible. You are becoming different people every time you step into the hospital. Like, it's a different person every time you lose your hair, every time you have like different, like more news, whatever, positive or negative, even to the point of like, you know, telling myself and learning, expect the worst, prepare for the worst, because anything else is a positive. Like the framework of my mind changed so much that it was almost crazy to look back at the previous person I'd been without this. It was almost like a mental crutch of like, and a boost up the arse to kind of go, like, look, you need to, that life is like, obviously life is, we all learn life is short and finite when you get cancer, and you're aware of your own mortality, but you don't have to reframe your mind when you get cancer. You don't have to do that. It's not an obligation or part of the diagnosis. That's very personal. And I don't know where, like how, like I think it is part luck and part personality that I was able to just kind of go, this works actually quite well for me. And again, lucky the people I had around me that also, like, you know, added into who I was and help that. Because if I didn't have my mom, you know, or like, you know, even my husband now, the people, like the supportive network, also like a massive influence on how you think. So well, like, you know, that was kind of taken away from me prior to cancer, and then I didn't really have it as much when I was, you know, there was a very certain and specific group of people that I had when I was diagnosed, and I've had like people, you know, come back, and it's been a bigger thing each time. But those people there at that have stayed ever since, you know, they're the reason that I have even like a part of my mind being a good place to live in. And again, I'm alone a lot. I have to exist in a nice place mentally. So, like, you know, socially you're so stunted. So my brain has to be a nice place to live. So I think that also comes into part of why my personality is the way it is, because I'm living with myself. I've got to be a fantastic person, otherwise, or a fun person, or, but, you know, whatever, because otherwise it's just, that's crap, boring. Like, imagine if I was hateful and like a bully, like, oh, who would want to live with themselves? You know what I mean?
well, you said that you had a great core of support from the beginning. So talk about diagnosis and what that looked like for you.
Oh God. Well, so again, like I had, and well, this, yeah, it is. I had a tumor growing in my stomach, and it just, you know, that was my symptom. I was very tired. I do remember maybe just everyone's a little bit of a hypochondriac in school, and I remember being like, oh my God, do I have ME? Like, what is this really bad fatigue? And I'd get migraines, but I didn't really connect all of it together. And then my stomach started obviously growing. I had like this protrusion, and I was, you know, again, it's not just luck. My mum is the person she is through grace and life herself. But I didn't have any fear of going to her and saying, right, mum, what's going on here? Like, what do I need to take a pregnancy test? What do we need to do? Because obviously I just met my partner. I just kind of become sexually active for the first time. It's all a big thing. And I remember being like, that would be just typical, wouldn't it? Like the first person, and then you've got a baby out of it. Looking back, a 9-year-old would be lovely. That's what I mean by cancer's great in some ways, but I would have much rather had a 9-year-old and dealt with that kind of stigma. I think I could have dealt with that. I've got the mental strength. But so we do kind of joke about that, you know, we've had a 9-year-old just bouncing around right now. But I remember going to my mum and saying, what the hell do we do? And then the pregnancy test came back negative, and then it was a case of going, well, I've still got a lump here, but no one could really see it. I think my mum thought I was being a typical kind of paranoid teenager about their figure, because again, just got a new partner, so everything was very like my brain was just going like, you know, pretty, be this, be this, be this. Like so we went to the doctors, and again, I wasn't really listened to. And that is very much an age factor. They do, like, I don't know what it is about healthcare professionals not taking specific like groups of people seriously, but like, you know, that was a barrier. I said, they're coming back negative. There's just no way I can be pregnant. And I was met with, I think you're 12 weeks pregnant. And the speed at which they booked an ultrasound, maybe they will, you know, they also were thinking, could it be something else? But the fact that I was met with that, just, you know, I said one thing and they said the next, completely ignoring me, really, really angers me to this day. But we went for the ultrasound, and that was when we, you know, found out straight away there's no baby in there. That was very nerve-wracking. But again, I had my mum to hold my hand, and she came with me, and you know, there was no fear of hiding this from her, and that was like, I'm very, very grateful, because from the very beginning there's always been openness. I've never had to go, oh my god, a surgery's happened, and like I'm now really, really vulnerable, and I've not got that relationship with you, and we've got to forge it right here in this ward with a curtain between us. It was always like, no, we know exactly what's going on. I don't even need to speak to you after surgery to know that, like, you know, you can, I'm not embarrassed, kind of thing. And so yeah, they said from the get-go, oh, it's likely a dermoid cyst. And so I had to Google that. I mean, obviously, you know, everyone says when you get diagnosed with cancer, don't Google. But that, you know, when it's something that isn't cancer related, you all you have is Google, because they're not going to give you any more information. So dermoid cyst is gross, and it's cells that haven't formed in the embryo and grown with you. So it's like teeth and hair and gross, horrible things. So that's what I was expecting when I had surgery, because it grew and grew and grew and grew. Looking back, the speed at which it grew, that was highlight, you know, that was evident of his malignancy. I didn't know that. None of us really were thinking that. But I went to A&E, and I do remember, side note, I remember being at my boyfriend. It was my boyfriend, like Luke at the time. Obviously, we were only boyfriend and girlfriend, and I was staying overnight at in his flat. And I was so worried about waking him up at 5 a.m. because he had work. I was so worried about angering him that I went into the living room, called my mum, and went, Mom, I need to go to A&E, please, I'm in so much pain. And I was on the sofa for an hour, writhing in pain, trying to be so quiet, trying not to wake him up. And to be fair, that kind of has stayed ever since in our relationship. Like, I will always try and not anger my partner and just go straight to my mum. I don't know why. Like, I'm 26, I should just be going to Luke, but I'm not like, no, mum, my mummy. I've never grown out of that, and that's a testament to our relationship, I guess. We've got best friends, and we've still got me and her, like, we'll always be mother and daughter. But yeah, I called her, she took me into A&E, and then it was all very like, oh no, nothing's wrong, to, oh gosh, it's pressing on your kidney, oh, your blood work's fine, oh no, actually it was just this constant back and forth until I was blue lighted into the right section of the hospital, where, you know, I had my first cannula put in, and all I'd had prior to that was a needle. So tiny little needle. So even then I'm kind of going like, oh my god, that like is a really big pain. And I'm experiencing pain for the first time in new ways. So my brain's dealing with that. I'm not even thinking really about the thing inside me. And then I was met with different groups of people, and then it became gynecology oncology instead of just gynae. And that's when my mum twigged. But I was 17, didn't know what oncology meant, didn't even know what really gynecology meant. And then there was a back and forth about whether I was going to have surgery then, or they were going to just delay it. And that was when my mum just stuck her foot down, and she's been my biggest advocate, because if I don't say something, she will. And back then, obviously, I hadn't found my voice, even just as a person, even as just a young person, a teenager, I hadn't found my voice, let alone someone in a hospital. So I really lent on my mum to be my advocate there. And she said, no, absolutely not. I'm not sending my child. No, you're not sending my child home. I will stay here. And then they went, actually, yeah, no, you're kind of right. We will need to operate. And it became like the next day. And yeah, I came out of surgery. That was really successful. They obviously took some things. I didn't have any fertility chats before, prior, so the things that they took, like my ovary and my appendix, didn't really matter. But do you know what I mean? Like there was no prior chat to what that meant. And so afterwards my mum went, oh, can we get the eggs from the ovary? Like none of us knew what you did with fertility treatment. And they were like, oh no, that ovary's gone. Like you can go for fertility treatment with the other one, which we would recommend. But like if this becomes this or whatever. And that was a chat with my mum, not me. And then I went home, we did the recovery. I remember having a lot of flying saucers and a lot of overnight sleepovers with my mum on downstairs, which was really, it was kind of fun, you know, like I think school, like college was just finishing. So I was, you know, everyone was kind of like aware of my missing presence. And I was just at home vibing after and recovering, just chilling with my mum. My brother was quite funny at the time as well, cracking jokes. So it was a good experience in the face of it. And then I went back in, and now I'm very aware the more people in a room, the worse the news you're gonna get. But at that point, it was just like, oh, okay, there's my surgeon, there's a couple of nurses here that haven't introduced themselves, whatever. And we sat down, and he just said, yeah, it's a tumor. And I was like, because I'd asked for photos, so he brought up the sliced pathology of my tumor, which is huge. It was the size of a rugby ball. And every time I say 25 centimeters, people forget just the metric system, and they're like, oh, millimeters, so quite small then. And I'm like, no, centimeters, rugby ball. And then they're like, oh my god, that was just growing inside you, stretching my ovary. And I was like, yep. And so I couldn't work out what the tumor was. I was like, is it that gooey yellow bit? And he was like, no, it's all of it. This is the cancer. And so I was kind of trying to keep everything scientific in my brain, like try not to cry, because I was so embarrassed about crying. I was still back in my, like, you know, paranoid, anxious, growing up as a teenager, like, oh, that's just so ew, I don't want to cry, like I don't know these people. So I just grabbed my mum's hand, and I was there like, don't, like, you know, I'm not gonna cry, you're not gonna cry, we're gonna get through this. And then they left the room because they needed to like do a speculum check, which was also horrible. They don't prepare you for that, opening your bloody cervix, and how uncomfortable that is. And I remember they left the room, and I looked at my mum, went, don't cry, and I was like right on the edge. And then had more pain because of the cervix opening. And then we were immediately directed to my consultant in a room. Well, we had an assigned nurse, and then we were in a side room, and that was where I broke down, just cried my eyes out, and eventually met with my oncologist, and that was all the new words I was learning. And the worst thing I did, looking back, I still think this, is I called Luke, and he, because he was aware that I was going in for my checkup, just to, you know, see the scar was healing and all of that. And I called him, and he was at work, and I just went, it's cancer, it was a tumor. And he just was like, sorry, what? Like, give me a sec here. And I just remember thinking, that was like, you know, the way I tell people, that's like that I don't know, it's just a weird thing for me. I just think the way I project my emotions onto people is the way they're going to interpret the situation. And I've learned that since, but I didn't know that at the time. So if I, you know, find something out, the way I tell my mom is the way I know she's going to process it. So if I'm upset, she's going to think, okay, this is the programming that I'm now going to be experiencing. It's going to be scary. It's going to be upsetting, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if I tell her in a nonchalant way, she's aware that I'm pretty chill. Maybe it's a bad situation, but we can work through it. We're not in an emotional state. But I didn't know that. And so that's been a learning curve, because I've had to tell people 3 times that it's back or that it's cancer. And each time you get a little bit better at it, but it's never an easy conversation. That is not something they teach you. Can't be taught either. I mean, I know you definitely don't even really learn from it, because each time I've told people, it's been a horrible kind of like, oh, by the way, yeah, it's kind of grown back. Or then just, how do you drop that into conversation? Because if I go, oh, I need to schedule a meeting with you, let's do this, it almost becomes they're aware of what I'm going to say probably, and then it's just waiting for the bomb to drop constantly. So it was a weird one, diagnosis time, and looking, and you know, it's so long ago that even talking about it feels like a different person. And obviously I've kind of, if I look at each relapse as a diagnosis, then there's 3 of those times that I've got to think about. And so it's a bit weird, of a weird way to look. Do I mash them all together for like, you know, and then like before this one that we're currently living in, with the relapse being, I don't know, 5 years, and then the previous ones are all just lumped together, or am I looking at them separately? It's emotionally, it's a hard one, but that was 17, and that was little me, baby me, learning everything for the first time.
I relate to so much of what you're saying, and I remember in our journey when Cole's cancer occurred, I prefaced the announcement that I made like publicly on his Caring Bridge with, "I'm so sorry that I'm about to ruin your day," right? Like I was apologizing to whoever was about to read what I was about to say.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this, you don't want people to feel the way that you feel, and so you try to control for that as best you can. And I certainly understand that. And so when you finally heard it's a tumor, how long had that been from the pregnancy test, the first pregnancy test?
Well, apart from, you know, feeling like a bit ignored and like the back and forth going a bit awry, I was a pretty fast diagnosis. Like I can't fault the speed when a lot of people face that as a barrier, because I think it was, you know, I noticed it growing from about March, and then May was the beginning of May was the test, and it was June 14th that I was diagnosed. So it really, you know, apart if I'd gone to the doctor sooner, I think, you know, I don't know, it wouldn't have done anything really. But that was, you know, those 2 months between me noticing and like actively noticing it and going to the doctors, that could be reduced. But it was literally, you know, about a month and a half.
Yeah, but a month and a half before you even heard tumor, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, you had certainly not heard DSRCT. What kind of tumor were you originally told that it was?
So mine, this is what's funny. Well, in a very morbid way, because I was told it was a carcinoma of the ovary, and I then said, sorry, say that again, sarcoma of the, and they were like, no, carcinoma. You don't want sarcoma. And so I remember that being what my oncologist said, and the correction of my language, and I've remembered that since. And again, a lot of people face that. Oh, you've got the good cancer. But realistically, I would love to be told that. I would love to be told you've got the good cancer, you've got the curable one. But that's only because I've got an incurable cancer. That's my experience. If I was someone met with cancer for the first time, that is an awful thing to say, because they've got no experience of cancer at all anyway. So, you know, like we spoke about, language is so important, and that they're very flippant, because again, it's patient after patient, and I've been made to feel like a statistic more times than I can count. But that was one of those times where I felt like, okay, looking back, that wasn't patient focused at all. That was you just, you know, that was just medical jargon coming out of your mouth before you even had time to process, this could be not helpful.
Well, and also I think it's a little bit a selfish attempt on the clinician to reassure themselves, right? Because it's hard to give someone devastating, life-changing news, right?
Yeah.
They know what this is going to do to their life.
Yeah.
So in order to make it a little better, they say something like, oh, but it's okay because it's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or ovarian carcinoma or something. Yeah. And almost every DSRCT family I talk to is given a wrong diagnosis at the beginning.
It's so common.
So
yeah.
We know that whoever's having this conversation might be contradicted later with new information. Those people should probably be hyper aware of the fact that is not a helpful statement, not for the moment, and definitely not for the future.
Yeah. Because again, like when I was told it was DSRCT, that was 2 years later, and because I'd relapsed, and they had more tumors to remove, and the pathology then, that when they did a biopsy, there was a test available that hadn't been, and that was why it was found. If that test hadn't been available again, I probably would still have been treated with ovarian, really. But I had the same oncologist throughout that 2-year period, and I was, aside from his lack of vigilance sometimes and his language, which again, I was lumped in with a group of people with ovarian cancer that were a lot older than me, and I was a very young patient, and I think he just didn't really know what to really do with me. And so there was a lot of like banter that wasn't appropriate, but again, I was young and I wasn't aware that that wasn't appropriate. I just kind of felt a little bit icky. But again, I have to attribute the majority of my correct diagnosis with him going, doesn't sit right with me, this is not good, I think we should test with this. And that was on him. So I have to have this again, that I have to have that gratitude, even though I want to be angry at you. It's that balance, and it is throughout everything. Every part of cancer has that. But yeah, no, it was 2 years before I heard DSRCT.
And you heard that at recurrence. So tell us what happened when you had the recurrence that led to that.
So it's a bit of a similar situation in that I was noticing symptoms and I was warring with them again, my medical team, because it had been a year and a half. And what you're met with when you're diagnosed is everything's curative. Everything is with the intent of being curative. So once you finish, it's a case of go and live your life. Forget about this horrible experience you've had, and don't be paranoid, because if you're paranoid, that's not living your life. So you just off you go. We might give you a scan. We might do this. Oh, we're adding to your paranoia by not giving you like proper confirmation every like couple of months. It's just as and when. And so that's what I was living with. So I ended up having the coil put in because I still had a uterus at that point, so and an ovary and the whole setup, so I could still get pregnant. So I remember being like, okay, I need to still, even though I'd had chemo and they were like, you know, you could get infertile, and I'd had fertility treatment, and we'd managed to get some embryos in that time, which was very, very lucky, and we're very fortunate for that. But I obviously still had to have like, you know, protected sex and stuff. So I had got the coil, and something just wasn't right, and it was just, you know, I was bleeding a lot. I had so many things that I was like, this isn't normal for this. And so I was going back and forth, and they eventually booked me an ultrasound that I had to have a speculum for, and I was like, this is going to be really painful. And then they lost it, and I had to have it again. And I feel like a lot of my situation has been like, you know, missing things that I've had to repeat, and it's at the expense of me and my pain. And that was one of the first occasions, was, you know, that I was aware of losing the scan. I had to have it again. And so I was pretty angry when I went in the room, and the radiologist was lovely. She tried, you know, she spoke, and I think that's the difference in a good doctor is just speak to the patient. Do you know what I mean? Like if any kind of situation can be resolved with words, you can even shut up if you need to, but just speak. And she spoke to me, and I said, can you just point out on the scan the bits that I should be concerned about? Like, what is this? And she actually did point out. She was like, that, you know, could be concerning this color here. And so then and that was again another May journey. And then so what's it? Yeah. So I then went to, so I'm dealing with all of this kind of like uncomfortableness, and then I went to Glastonbury Festival, and I came back the next day. I had a scan, and it was that scan that they found the recurrence. And then they looked at the scan that I'd had the previous September and realized, oh, because they needed something to compare to, and that was my remissions, meant to be my first remission scan. And they realized, oh, we've missed actually the recurrence on that. So I never even got that far. So me thinking, you know, there are milestones, my 18th birthday, and then a year being out of treatment. And it was like, that's a lie. I never made it this far because you missed the scan. And so so that was pretty frustrating. And then obviously it was straight back into surgery talks, everything. You know, the more surgeries you have, the higher the death risk goes up, and all the percentages and all of the paperwork. And the problem with this one was it was still ovarian. So it wasn't DSRT yet, DSRCT yet. It was ovarian, and it was taken with an ovarian regime and strategy. And that is if you can't take all of it, you take none of it. And so I had to go in with that scientific, just a statistic. This is what they do perspective. And my mum was going in very human, very motherly, very, very emotional, going, I don't get that. If you can take half of it, why wouldn't you take half of it? Surely. And I'm there going, because if you take half of it, there could be complications, and it's still likely grow back. And that's been the thing ever since I've had to take on ever since is if you know that they will do that in every kind of walk of my cancer. If they can't take all of it, then they'll just won't bother because the complication risk is so high. So I was very fortunate with my surgery and the complications, because I could have ended up with well, I think it was an ileostomy bag. So I went to meet the bowel doctors, and I had a lovely pair of women. And again, I think I very much prefer my women team when it comes to everything I've experienced. They've been brilliant, and it's been the men that have let me down or been problematic in some way. The women can't fault. And so it was a lovely pair of women, just so knowledgeable, so caring. And I ended up going home with 2 massive black dots on where the colostomy bag or the ileostomy bag would go. And they were like, you're likely to have an ileostomy if they have to resect more than your bowel twice. So I've had 1 big bowel resection, and that is obviously the limit is 2 before you're then there's just nothing, there's not enough, you know, your bowel is just a bit like obstructed, and you have to have that. And so it was, you know, a 9.5-hour surgery. And I found out on the other side that my parent, like no one, my mum, anyone who was with her, didn't find out any information for about 2.5, 3 hours, because they spent that long on 1 tumor. And they were like, this is the tumor. If this doesn't come out, none of them do. And then finally they got that call saying, like, we've managed to do this. And again, it was just that the dedication, like, is as me as and I felt like it, like to me as a patient there, to really save my life and change. They could have just gone like, nah, which I have experienced recently with the liver team, kind of just going, we're looking at stuff and going, well, I don't think a stent's going to work, instead of going, actually the option is death. It's stent or death, always try stent. And they went with that, always that they went down that route, always try, because the other option is an early death. And so they cleared me out, and I ended up with no ileostomy. I had to have a full hysterectomy, so it was very lucky that we'd had fertility treatment and embryos saved. And then I just had my recovery again, same process, 2 weeks, and came back in. And I went on my own, because I was like, you know, I've done this for 2 years now. It's just a surgical update. My mum, unfortunately, was having a massive mental health dip, and I went with my aunt, and I just said, you know, you can stay in the waiting room, school, I'll be out in a sec. It's a very hot day, so I think it was just one of those where it's like, I just want to get in and out, you know. It's just looking at my scar, which was a bigger one, so I just assumed it was just, you know, they wanted to look at the glue. And again, I'm in the room, there's multiple people, and I'm just thinking, oh, well, I've experienced this before. And so I was just expecting them to say, I don't know, something else. And then they said, it's not the cancer, that, you know, it's not ovarian cancer, it's this. And I was just kind of like, I have no idea what you're on about. And I think I stormed out the room at one point during one of these later appointments, because I finally had that anger where I was like, no, you've done me a disservice. But in that initial finding out appointment, I just sat there like a statue, just kind of like, I have no idea what you're saying. Like, they're just like, you know, more appointments were being made within that appointment. So all I had to do was kind of process what it was called, that I was okay physically, go home. That was kind of it. And obviously no one expected me to go in and have that news. And then that week was the week of my last show, theatre show. We did Oliver with my theatre group, and I just had to kind of go, well, if I don't play Nancy, then I'm not, you know, gonna, like, I need to kind of go, right, that's separate. I've got a role to play that I really wanted to do. And so I just kind of compartmentalized again, because I'd learned how to do it. And then I think I held back a day from telling certain people that, you know, could have found out on the day. And then, yeah, it was a case of having to Google what the hell DSRCT meant, because I didn't even have the letters in the right order. Like, even now, there are people around me that get, you know, stumble over it and then just say, oh, sarcoma. And I'm like, no, we've got to be specific here. Sarcoma is shit, but like, I finally got the right one. Like, I finally know what I have. Let's at least give it the justice it deserves to be, like, named. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was that. Not a fun time.
I can't imagine going for 2 years. I mean, Cole's diagnosis changed 6-7 months after his original diagnosis, but for 2 years, multiple surgeries, all that you had been through, you know, thinking like you were on this one path, and then they bring you in a room and they're like, so about the diagnosis.
It's like
that
forget
just
all you know,
brings-
and we're going to reprogram it now, and we're going to start again, but we're not going to start again because you're somewhere in a really shitty middle.
And of course, you in your mind have, and it's a sarcoma now, and I'm sure you're remembering what he said about sarcoma.
Straight away. And I think that was why in that later appointment I had that anger, because it was just everything was bubbling to the surface of the prior 2 years. And so I had, you know, that I hadn't had that gratitude. There was no way back then I was like, you know, old enough or aware enough of my own cancer journey and perspective changing that I had like thank you and F you as well. And that kind of came out in that appointment that I stormed out. And also I just think like, yeah, not many people probably do that to you. Like it was very obvious. And so I kind of felt like I had some power back of like, no, you can't just, you know, you be aware of your language. This is a teachable lesson because you've done that to me. You won't do this to someone else if you don't have this memory. And I think I've had to operate like that a lot with this with having this diagnosis, because you have to be an advocate every single step of that I make, that they make, that my team make, is almost going to impact the next person that gets diagnosed with DSRCT or just the wider cancer community. And a lot of, you know, even pals complaints where I've been like, oh my God, is my care going to get worse because I've complained? Like, but I need to because it's not good. Like they've put the wrong PICC line in. They, like, how have they not I've consented to this. That's like consenting to take the wrong, consenting to one kidney, you're taking the other one. Like, how have you got that wrong? I need to make a complaint about this. But then I'm like, but they might hate me and then change my care as a result. But then I was thinking like, you know, if I make this complaint now, it's very, very unlikely someone else is going to have to go through this. So it's kind of like I do sit here and wonder often what someone has said before me that's meant I've not experienced something horrible, because I don't know what, you know, I've not experienced it. I don't know what it is that I've missed, but someone before me has definitely looked out for me in ways that I don't know, and someone after me is looked after by me in ways that they don't know, because it's just it's a baton that you pass on, an invisible knowledge baton, really. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing in our community by bringing live stories together, right? Is like, I would say I know quite a bit about DSRCT, but that's because I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? There are people that were before me that taught me and advocated and did patients that were in trials that got us to where we are today. But it is so meaningful that you share because I find you to be fierce and amazing, and you share that with, in a way, like the knowledge that you carry, that you're not just doing this for yourself, right? Like you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
But you're not just fighting for your life. You're also advocating for, and really, in my eyes, are an example of what can be possible when you advocate with this disease. So I'm so grateful for your example. Let's talk about where we left off, you found the DSRCT, it's DSRCT, but it's gone at this point, right? They've removed all visible disease.
Yeah.
And now you know it's DSRCT. What happens then?
So you've highlighted an important point, because I think the fact that they eradicated the disease and I went into the next steps with a completely kind of clear body was very quintessential to what, like, you know, very, very, very essential to how successful this next treatment was, because we've got to remember I made it 1.5 years into remission from the start of my first chemo, being treated with ovarian chemo. You know, that's baffling in itself when they give the timeline of 2 years, you know, that's your life. So that's essentially baffling. And so I now am aware that was the wrong thing. Okay, I'm going to be treated with the right thing, and then get told, no, there's no DSRCT protocol. So you're in this general sarcoma team. We'll go with the Ewing's regime. And so I ended up being an inpatient and having the Ewing's regime. And obviously everyone is aware of Dr. Roobson, the Red Devil. Really did not get on with that. That was when I learned that your mouth, where they, you know, go on about ulcers and stuff, is exactly the same as your butthole. And everything is just very sensitive. And you learn a lot about your own body. So, that was not a fun ride. And And again, I do remember them being like, well, we don't really know. That was the beginning of, we don't really know how much to give you. So we'll just kind of carry on and carry on and carry on. And that, again, that uncertainty from your medical team, led by man, was just icky. Like, I know that you don't know much about this cancer. I appreciate that, but I don't know anything at all. So I find being led by you going, oh, we don't really know how much to give you. And the only reason I stopped treatment was because of COVID. Oh, we think you've had enough. So, like, you know, go off, enjoy your life again. And it was back in that like paranoid, don't be paranoid, don't be this, don't be that. And so that was it. You know, I did Ewing's regime, and I'm aware that this is the second treatment that isn't right for my cancer now. How long will it give me? And it gave me another like year and a half. My timelines might be wrong, but I was definitely well into the end of 2021, around November, December, before I found out that I'd relapsed again. And I started inpatient chemo around September time again. I think I did September to March, and then had March to the following December. So again, I have no idea why these chemos worked, or like, you know, kept it shrinking. I've always said that and it's made me have this view that I've always joked like, oh, you know, my cancer's just really lazy. Because what else do I have to go on? I have nothing. You've given me nothing. So that was that relapse, the second one in a nutshell.
And when you say that you did the Ewing's sarcoma protocol, or P6 or VDCIE, it's called a lot of different things around the world. How many rounds of that did you do? And then how long was it before? How long were you off of chemo before the recurrence showed up? Do you recall?
Yeah, I think it was about 11. Between 11 and 14 rounds. I think it was. And then it was from March 2020 to December 2021. Okay. That I was in remission. Oh, okay. There were no missed scans there. I was scanned, and then what led to them actually like taking action was just because my lymph node numbers had gone into like the danger zone, and they were like, this is the point now, I think we need, you know, intervention. And if you want me to go on to like the next part of my relapse, of the third one, I can just continue, because it's a very seamless journey. Please. Really. They just, and again, it's clinical trial based, and like, you know, looking at it where I've that with clinical trials, there are so many barriers: age restricted barriers, financial, social, travel, like everything could be a barrier to a clinical trial in this bloody world, really. You know, like a butterfly, you could be the butterfly effect. Someone steps on a butterfly and suddenly you're not eligible. I didn't really, and you know, I'm still kind of posting how lucky I was to have them actually contact another hospital, have this trial available that was for DSRCT, and be able to have someone take me there and enact that. And so that was from December, and it was pretty much like, you know, from January I had these appointments in London, which is 2.5 hours away from me. And it was, we'd get expenses because, and this was then again, oh, I'm a statistic here, and I did use it to my advantage by once I'd learned, but at the beginning you're just thrown, you're like, oh my god, there was a lot of crying. So the first meeting was getting, you know, blood work, all of the other stuff that you need, and then it was a case of, well, we need to put you in a group. And that was where I learned, oh, so I don't get the chemo, like I don't get the drug. No. There's a 66% chance that you'll get it. It's randomized. And I was like, what the hell are you on about? And so that was when I found out, you know, there is a 33% chance that I won't get this drug. And if I don't get that drug, that's it, done. I can't, if I partake in this trial, I can't ever go on again. And if I don't do the trial, what else is available that is literally for my cancer? And so I was just angry, crying, couldn't speak through snot at one point on the way home, because I was waiting for the phone call on the way home. They were like, we'll try and get the answers as quick as we can. And that phone call where they said, you're in the group, I was like, thank God, because I was telling them, if I can't be in this trial with the drug, I'm not coming and being a part of it, because you're giving me drugs that I can access at home. So I don't have to, you know, burden myself with this 2.5 hour journey. Do you know what I mean? And they couldn't understand that. They were trying to say like, oh, but like it would be invaluable data. And I'm like, I'm not data though. I'm a person. I can be an advocate all I want, but fundamentally my care has to come first for me, you know. And that was like, you know, a war between like, I want to help, I really do, I want to be that person that aids the next person, but fundamentally I've got to put me first if it's a case of my family and us being affected by finances, by travel, by this. And so I was very, very lucky to be in that group, because I know that there were three of us on that regime. And if you do the odds, one of us was likely to not be on it, but it could have, you know, we could have all been on it. It could have been another hospital, but you just, you know, you just never know. And so that was my experience at the beginning of the trial. And then we got expenses, because that was when I realized, oh, okay, you know, on data, they want me to stay on it. So if travel and that is an issue in petrol, then they're going to give me the money. And then it got to a point where I was on it for about 6 months, and it was just unfeasible for someone to wait with me all day and then take me home. And it was getting really stressful for me, because I was like, this isn't a fun journey. At one point it was, they wanted me there at 9 because I didn't have any blood work, so they needed to do the blood work there, wait for the chemo to be made, then I'd have it. And that was like, you know, getting up at 5, 6, and I was like, this is just not, I can't work. So then the next thing was then trying to arrange with Bristol to get blood work there, which you'd think hospitals communicate. And that was where I was like, oh my God, they don't. It took 4 months before I had my first actual day in London where the blood tested worked and the chemo was made, and I arrived at 12 and I could go home at a normal time, because they just were getting it wrong. I was going in with a list like, you need to do this and this and this, read it off, count the bottles, and it just didn't happen. And so then that was stressful, because I was like, oh, come on, guys, I'm doing a job for you now, and I'm not even paid. And so that was another barrier. And then after that, obviously, I was just annoyed, and they realized, you know, this is a long time you've been on it. They were not expecting me to be on it this long at all. Then it was very apparent. And then they arranged a taxi for me. So then suddenly I'm like, bloody hell, you know, you've got a lot of money in this trial if you can afford £500 for a taxi to come and pick me up and take me there and wait all day and take me home. And it was the same guy every week, and he was lovely. And it was just, that was luck that I had Reza, because he was such a lovely man. And he once he realized crunchies was my favorite chocolate, there were 4 multi-pack of crunchies who were always waiting for me on the seat when I got in, to the point that I was like, I can't eat all of these, I really can't. And then he would give me his card, literally give me his card, this man, on the way home at the service station, to go and buy myself whatever I wanted from Starbucks or whatever I wanted. And it was just like, you know, I was so against it, because I felt so uncomfortable, until I realized, hold on a sec, I can't control other people. If he wants to do this, he wants to do this, just like if I did that to someone else. So my experience of the trial was only good because of the people. Like, the nurses were lovely, my taxi driver was lovely, and my family are lovely, because otherwise it was just data-based horror. And then I was on it for 2 years, nearly to the day, I think. And I remember the phone call that I got to say that you aren't on it, because again, every scan it was like stable, maybe a little bit bigger but stable, and then it was a case of like, if it gets to the danger zone of growth, you'll just get kicked off. And it was that phone call after a scan, they said, oh yeah, no, it's grown. And it wasn't grown much at all, but it was like, no, you can't come up. And I was like, so I'm not coming up tomorrow? No, you're not. And that was it. So I had no final appointment with them at all. It was just a call, and that was it. I had an email from my nurses to basically say like, oh my God, we're going to miss you so much. And that was because they chose to do that. I had no final meeting in the hospital, because I was on the trial. So they were like, we're not going to book the taxi, you can come up if you want. And we were like, well, that's a waste of a day for us, really, if it's a nothing thing. And yeah, that was it. And then it was kind of like, well, now what? This was 2024, so I did 2022 to 2024.
What was the drug or the trial that you were on?
I can't remember what the trial was called, but it was ramucirumab, and then I had vinoralbin, and I want to say cyclophosphamide. So 1 week I had the drug, and then the other week I just had the vinoralbin and the cyclophosphamide. And then if it was like, if my platelets were low, I couldn't have one thing. If my bloods were low, I couldn't have the other. So some weeks I went up, and I had, you know, there were barriers to which drug I had. Mostly I went up and had the whole thing. And
but it was basically a chemo combination trial.
Yeah. And so actually I lied. That was a complete lie. I did obviously I was kicked off the trial, but then it was a case of, because I was on cabazantinib, so I'm looking at my mum because my brain's gone a bit fried. I did stay with them and then this was when I realized, oh, okay, because I was under the pediatrics research team, so I was technically way too old to be there, but it was because it was the trial. And so they did keep me a little bit longer than they were allowed to, just because I knew the team, and it was a bit stupid to move me. And then I went on to this drug called cabazantinib, and I remember being told the nibs and the mabs are good, go with them. So that's another thing that a doctor had said prior to being told about DSRCT, where I'm like, okay, nibs and mabs. And so I was just trying to hold on to these drugs, like, yes. Because the alternative to cabazantinib was just doing chemo. And I was like, well, let's delay chemo as long as possible, because like that's the eventuality. Let's see what we can cram in beforehand. And that bleached my hair and bleached my skin, but I tolerated it okay. And then again, I think because this is all last year, so it's all just really like, whoa. One day they just went, oh, you can't be on cabazantinib anymore. We're going to just stop that. And then I was thrown back into Bristol. And then, within like a week of being back with Bristol, it was like, you're going to die. So it was all very intense, leaving London and going to Bristol. And it was all a massive blur last year. But I was on the cabazantinib for a year, I think. So London held me hostage, held me from 2022 to 2025, I think. Yeah.
And so maybe tell us about last year and what happened then when you went back.
So I'm going to be looking at my mum a lot, because again, my brain is just kind of fried when I think about what actually happened. But I think, why did I even go into hospital for the actual one? Like, what was my...
We started off in January.
Was I in pain? Okay, so 2025. So the process of 2025, January, I ended up just having pain, and I went in and I had about how long? A few days stay, a week. It's all a real blur, really. But I had a hospital stay, January, February time, and then came out, and that was the kind of kickstarter of like, oh, I'm not feeling very well, and then kind of, never really got back to my full strength, because I wasn't eating masses, I was losing weight, and then looking back, it was like, that was obviously the cancer ramping up and whatnot. And then in summer, I just ended up going in with really bad pain, I think, and then just didn't leave for 3 weeks. And so it was 4 days of being in absolute agony and not being given anything more than 2.5 ml of Oromorph. That was it. And I'm going like, I'm allowed, I'm taking like more than that at home. Like, why aren't you, like, come on, like, I can't just self-medicate here. And I think it was 4 days before they were like, oh, we think you've got pancreatitis. And then they finally let me have more drugs. But I do remember saying to my mum, the only way I could convey the level of pain I was in to someone that hasn't experienced it is by doing, like, the dramatics. And I was just kind of like, I just want to die. That was the only way I could think, this is pain will go. Sleeping didn't do anything, rubbing my back didn't do anything, mindfulness, any, like, drugs, anything, it just, the pain wasn't going away. And it was just like, and I just remember being like, I just want to die, that's the only way, I think. And it was just kind of like, wow, I've never ever said that before, because it's never been that bad. And I think that was, my 10. And then, are you still there, by the way? Sorry, the screen's just gone black. Oh no, it's gone. Oh, you are there. Hello. Sorry, it went weird. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, you were there the whole time, right?
Yes.
Oh,
we're good.
Sorry. I just looked down and was like, it's just the dot.
My video has been really in and out, so I apologize.
Okay. It's fine as long as you're still there. So it was pancreatitis at first, and then it was kind of like, okay, we've got something to deal with. And then they were monitoring my levels, and then that was when the liver came into play. I've never had liver problems before, and so then it was suddenly like, oh, I'm going yellow, oh my gosh. And I was like looking at myself in the mirror thinking, shit, like, I've never had this, this is a new symptom. So there was the yellow in my skin, my eyes was a big one. And then what happened, Mum? I'm trying to think. I had this all in my mind earlier and it's completely gone.
They were just monitoring your blood and your
I think I was just there, wasn't I? Just there, being monitored.
Just going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And up.
Everything was just going the wrong way. So like my infection markers and my bilirubin and my ALT, is that the liver? So they were just monitoring that. So I was kind of just there again in a bed, wait, like praying things would come back into focus and be okay. And then that's when the stent thing happened. They obviously, my team met with the liver people because they were aware that my ducts were sludgy, is what they called it, and they needed to obviously get them unsludged, and that was the only way that my levels were going to come down. And they met with they had their MDT with the liver people, and I never met them. And then they came back, and that was when I was just in a room. I think I'd been there for maybe 2 weeks at that point, just coming up to 2 weeks. And then that was when they came in again. It's that cohort of, you've got your consultant, you've got more people than you need. So I'm thinking, great, so this is going to be fun. And then the words that came out their mouth was something that I've just never, you can't prepare for, especially because they can't prepare you. They can't just go, by the way, I'm going to tell you this thing, so prepare yourself. Oh, and now I'll tell you. Like, you can't, that doesn't work. It's just, you just say it. And they said, yeah, you've got there's nothing we can do. You've got a couple of months, a few weeks, couple of months to live. And it was like me, Luke, and my mum in the room, and Miley, I think. And we were just like, and my dad, and we were just like, right. And I think after the conversation happened, it was just very much that. It was condensed to that. And then my mum was like, right, everyone get the hell out. Luke and Verity need a moment. Because I was again doing the typical, like, don't cry, there's a lot of people in the room. And then I just held on to Luke and was just kind of looking at him like, I don't know what to do with this information. Like, being told essentially you're going to die, but in like without a time frame really is. And again, some people get, you think of terminal and then think, oh, they're going to get 6 months to a year. I didn't think I would be that person that was just like a couple of weeks. And then in the time frame that I then was left in hospital, we found out that the liver people they didn't think a stent was going to be worth it, was viable basically. And that was the thing that would save me and my levels. And so I just said, well, you need to keep me here obviously because of whatever, but I don't want to be here. So can I have like day release? And then we had a really useful weekend that will just be in my mind forever, because my husband set up a marquee in the garden, invited people around on both days, and we had just the nicest barbecue, nicest food. I was feeling pretty okay. Like, the pain had gone. I was like, just kind of going, let's make a few TikToks. I kind of want to get some pajamas out of this. I love pajamas. Let's get a brand deal with my favorite Chelsea Piers pajamas. So I was just, I was mentally kind of, let's deal with this. And so my mum would take me home, and I'd go and have my day here. And then I'd say bye to Luke and Miley, and because Miley, my dog, was allowed in hospital. And I think that was another thing that's amazing about the Teenage Cancer Trust wards, is they're so patient specific for us. Like, they know that we need certain things, like a dog. If they have a therapy dog come around, why can't you have your own dog there? And so Miley coming in after 2 weeks was just kind of like, oh my God, give me a hug. So I got to have a whole weekend with them. And then when they released me, I had, this was my big experience with palliative care. And so I'd learnt with my pain that palliative did not mean terminal and dying. It meant the best people to deal with pain. They're the ones with the drugs. They know what they're doing. And at that, it took my fear away. So when they said, you're going to die, and then the palliative team are there, and they're like, right, I'm going to you guys, because you are the knowledgeable people now with all of it. And so I was kind of passed to them, and they've been my biggest advocates out of the medical team. They've been the ones that have been confused and gone, hold on a sec, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make sense. Or like, why aren't you trying this? Give her this. For God's sake, why aren't you listening? And I actually asked if one of them could be my go-to clinical nurse, because I was like, I felt so comfortable with them. And they were like, really? Like, that was that, they take that as patient-based, reward. It's like, thank you, that's an honor. And so I then had St. Peter's Hospice, which over here is an amazing charity, take over. And I had a district nurse end up coming to change my medication every day. And it was about, I think 5 months of that. And and the reason I say 5 months is because once I came out of hospital, my mum just it was like she just lived on a computer. Her brain, she just became a computer. There was not a single page of information that woman left behind. It was just like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? They're not doing enough. What can I do? And so she found in that time that I'd come out for a private doctor who also did NHS work. So it was very likely that he was in the room or knew the liver people that had said no stent. And so we booked an appointment with him after my mum had gone round and, you know, exhausted so many options, to the point that she was saying, you know, emailing secretaries going, if you know someone that can help, please like pass this on. But if you don't, then don't, because I don't want to make an appointment that's wasted. And so a secretary said, this doctor doesn't, but he knows someone that does. And they were the same, under the same secretary. And that was how we got Mr. Abadi, and we made an appointment, and it was the best £200 I think anyone's ever spent. And it was scary because he was very, very candid. It was, you know, it's very just like, right, here we go. If your bilirubin levels keep going the way that they're going, you're going to die in 2 weeks. So yeah, that, you know, that's it. So what can we do? We can try a stent. Here are your stent options. A stent that goes right and sits where in your liver, opens it up. Brilliant. That's option one. This is what the problem is. If it doesn't go right, it can't come out. So then you've got to have a stent that's outside in a drain, and that would mean you can't have further chemo because of infection risk, but you would live a bit longer. And so I'm there thinking, oh, I've got to do it. I really don't want that drain. I really, really don't, but I've got to. And me and my mum are sitting there thinking, and we actually voiced it. We said, I've been pretty successful with surgeries, you know, like I think it will go okay. I think we can do this. Let's just do it. And he was like, cool. And then he went to the MDT, and the following month, I think Monday, luckily, and they said, okay, for some reason. And then it was the consultant, the doctor that did the procedure surgery, was the doctor that I think had said no, was part of the group that said no. And yet here they are, they've done a stent, it's successful. Within 40 minutes, I'd woken up, was calling my mum going, it's in, it's done, it's fine. And she's going, what? Like, are you kidding? Like, it's been 40 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, look here. Look, she said it's draining fine, it's draining fine. And that was it. You know, a stent or death. Try the stent maybe. And it was, and they did it. And that is, I think, my mum's advocacy, this doctor just going, what, it's stent or dying, we may as well try. And having that kind of that mentality to advocate for me is the reason I'm here today. And again, like, you know, the support from palliative teams that have kept me on the right drugs and changed what I've needed. And that is where we're at, really. And a lot of hope and a lot of touching wood and going, I really hope this works out. But yeah.
It's so many powerful lessons that you've learned, but also that you're sharing with other people who walk this path. And I think one of the most special things about your story is your relationship with your mom. And you've said many times of how she's fiercely advocated for you and really your best friend. So talk a little bit about your mom and your relationship. So, because even though you're 26 and you're grown,
my lovely mother. Yeah, no, like I said, before cancer, it was a bit of a broken family situation for a good few months, and I think it brought us closer, especially in an adult way, because she lent on me for support in a way that she hadn't ever done before. And then I get cancer, and then I'm back to leaning on her. And then throughout cancer, it's very much been a changing, and with her own journeys with mental health, things have changed between mother-daughter to then I've been more of a parent, and then she's been more of a child, and then we've been friends throughout. And it's just what's blossomed through something so horrible has been really lovely. And like you said, she is my best friend in the sense of that's who I go to. I'll think I need to speak to my mum every day. That's a daily thing. And if we have an argument, the immediate thing is okay, I need to say sorry, or someone needs to apologize, and then it's moved on. It's just there's just so many, it's just all tied up in just this one little beautiful relationship. And I've been very lucky the last few months that she's had more time in the week, because the week is what I struggle with getting through, and then the weekend I try and have for my husband and our lives here. And so the middle of the week, we've just been literally hanging out and just doing fun things. And it's been so good for my soul. And yeah, again, just the relationship thing aside, just her being my biggest advocate, medically, and never, ever putting, like, you know, shutting that computer down that is her brain. And I know how angry she is that she wished, you know, that there was more support and other people were doing that. And I'm there like, well, trying to defend maybe people's actions where they're not doing like she's doing. And I'm just like, well, I can't, can I? Because you are just brilliant. And I think everyone else, well, you know, maybe if everyone was doing it and researching, then maybe, yeah, there would be more options, and more like, you know, push back against the doctors, and more voices always means more of like being listened to. And I'm just very, I can't even, I literally don't, I'm tripping over my words trying to explain it, because it just is something just so innate to me. Like, I look back at my friends, I always say to her, like, I look back at my friends' relationships with their parents in school and hope that they've improved, because there was one friend who didn't even really talk to her mum, like, at all. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not, like, speak? Like, what? And, like, they didn't have a relationship. And it was just baffling. Because, like I said, from the very get-go, there was no fear. There was no barrier, no hurdle, nothing. It was just whatever I had to say, I knew she would listen. I knew she would care without judgment. And I've done that to her as well. Like, you know, when she's needed support or a listening ear, maybe there's been a bit of judgment on both sides for different things. But it's, you know what I mean? It's always learning. And coming out of it's always love. You know, I think that's the most important thing. It's always love that has got us to where we are, and the, like, true dedication of that. And I think, you know, and it's sad, because it breaks my heart to know that I'm going to be the biggest heartbreak that she experiences at some point. I don't like that. That doesn't, you know, that really sits heavily on me, and I don't like thinking about it at all. But it's also like, I could not fathom life without her. So I'm like, selfishly, thank you, world, because I could not live in a world that she doesn't exist in. So it's a horrible one, you know, take one of us out and the other person's like, no, either way. So yeah, the gratitude is off the scale with the mother I got given. Really.
You have a beautiful relationship, and you're a powerful team. And that's shows in what you've been able to achieve together. And I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And you also, despite being diagnosed at 17 and all that you've been through, you have a partner, you're married.
Yes.
What's about your husband?
Oh, I don't know if he wants to be talked about, but I talk about him all the time. So for 9 years he's had to put up with it. But yeah, I came out of a relationship, like a young one that was very much like my childhood relationship, and then jumped into this one with him purely because I had a lovely crush. And then I'm lucky he's older than me, because obviously I enjoyed whatever period of time it was before being diagnosed, and then our worlds completely, you know, flipped upside down, and he had the emotional capacity to be like, yeah, I will stick by you, even though I said, and I did say this is your get out of jail free card. You did not sign up to a person with cancer. I know no one does, but I was like, you know, I think everyone should be given the opportunity to go, this might not be what my life actually looked like. And so, you know, we should all be selfish with the route and pathways, because you only have one. And even if that means letting someone down, and I know that more than ever now. Back then, I think I was just kind of like, oh, if you want to leave, that's fine. Like, this is horrible. And he obviously didn't, which is, you know, testament to him and his character. And he's just stood by me ever since, really. You know, we've had really horrible moments where I'm like, I don't know how we've survived as a couple, as a relationship, because it's just like, how do you even fathom these conversations? And you know, I've had a lot of therapy where, you know, my psychologist kind of became my friend, and ended up being a chat. And I know that he hasn't had counseling, because it's not something that he's not someone that can go, oh, can you go let the dog out upstairs? He's not someone that could just go, oh, I'll keep all my thoughts together and then talk about it. So, you know, there have been bumps where maybe we deal with things differently, but otherwise, you know, we've really walked this path together and grown up together as well, as much as grown through it. And it got to a point where I was like, you know, boyfriend isn't summing this up. You know, we've been together 5 years through a load of crap. We've lived so many different lives. We're practically 60. And I was like, you know, it just doesn't sum it up. And I was like, you know, we were using partner, but I was like, even that. And I was like, we just need the next step. And I just don't know if he ever would have taken that leap to proposing. But I was kind of like, if there's anything I can do to show how much I value you, it's showing you I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And so I proposed to him, which, you know, there are a load of horrible, you know, manosphere people out there that'd be like, oh, that's so emasculating, like what? Or like even for me, like, you know, I then actually sacrificed the proposal for me. Like I would, you know, I would always love to imagine how he'd propose to me and stuff, but that was important to me to make him aware. That was the only way I could really think like, no, this, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, whatever that looks like. Thank you for being here for me, like with me for it. And that's how much I love you. And we were very, very lucky with how I proposed. And again, it was through the generosity and just love of others, because someone lent me their property. Their property was a castle, it happened to be. So I ended up proposing to him in a castle for the night, and we had it to ourselves, and it was just wonderful. And that, again, just the generosity of others. And again, our wedding was through the generosity of her, again, lending us her property, and our wedding was there as well. And so it was, you know, if you don't do things and grab life by the balls, sometimes you don't get nice things. So if I hadn't done that, we wouldn't have what we had, you know, looking back now. And I remember being like, you know, when I think this was just before the London trial, and I said, okay, really shit's hit the fan here. I don't want to die unmarried. Like, I really want a wedding, whatever that looks like. And so we were very lucky that, you know, we had 6 months, and it was kind of like, if we'd done it traditionally, God, it wouldn't have happened. And so it was very much a DIY in a castle, somehow coming out feeling like a princess without too much stress. I think it was lovely. And so, yeah, he's a lovely man. There aren't enough words to describe him, even through his temper tantrums. And yeah, he's just, I think everyone deserves a bit of Luke in their lives. And together, I'll name, because my name Verity, Veritas is truth in Latin, and Luke's is light. And so my mum loves to remind us that together we're truth and light. And I like to think that he's my guiding light, and I just speak the truth a lot, and he is still with me yapping all the time, yapping away. So yeah, we work together well.
That's beautiful. And I'm so grateful that you have that blessing and that you have that relationship in your life. I think so despite, you know, 3 recurrences, a lot of misguidance and lack of direction from your doctors in the UK, a handful of life-threatening events. You've continued to defy DSRCT. You've continued to have beautiful moments and relationships and live fully. So talk about what life looks like for you today.
Well, tonight I'm cooking fajitas, we're watching the football, and that's important to me, because at one point, like, my love language is very much food. I tried to be a baker, tried to make that as a business, and it just couldn't get enough to be, you know, I did everything. I got my 5-star, I did everything, it was brilliant, going really well, but it didn't align with being ill. But I still have my love of baking, and my love language is food. And at one point last year, you know, I couldn't even stand, and I was like, you know, not able to be in the kitchen and relying on ready meals. And so my life today is now just like, every day I'm thinking, what can we eat? How can I stuff my face? How can I put weight on? How can I do this? I'm feeling so physically and mentally good. How do I make this last? And so every day is kind of like, you know, I'll sit in my egg chair and read and get extremely sweaty because we're in a heat wave. And I just think, like, I'm choosing to do this. This is great. Whereas, you know, before last year, I might have just been like, oh God, am I being lazy? Should I be doing something else? Like, should I be trying to get a job? Like, even though there's just why am I doing that? Like, my full-time job is cancer. It is a full-time job. I don't get paid for it, but like that, there's no luxury of having a break where I can go and do something else. Like, it is the amount of effort, even just to go and meet my friends, takes that out of me. But yeah, my life today is, like I said, I'm meeting my mom a lot. Luckily with the weather, we're really lucky with the weather. It's meant that I love the sun, so I'm having a great time. And it's basically just coming home from one thing and having something else to look forward to, and having something booked in, so that I'm not just stuck in this limbo where I do end up maybe losing perspective a bit, and maybe just like not doing the live every day to its fullest, because you just can't. It's not possible. Some days it is just an egg chair, sweating, reading, and that is enough. Like I said, I'm present, I'm aware, I'm enjoying myself. But yeah, cooking and having that presence of mind and energy to do that and feel good and book things and think I'm actually going to be alive long enough to do that. Hopefully, you know, in 9 or in just over a week, Luke and I will be going on a motorbike trip of Ireland. And I remember last year, once I got released from hospital, within about a week, I was on the back of his motorbike and we were going over to Wales and we were going and to stay the night somewhere. My consultant was like, "You're on the motorbike? What? Like you just what?" And it just amazed him. And I think that's what I like doing. I like continually just amazing people and making them think, "Oh God, she's doing a lot better than we thought," because you know they need that awareness that there is fight in people even when they put them into the side, like my liver team did. They just put me in a box of, well, that scan kind of looks like this, we've had other scans that look like that, and it's not been good, so we'll just not worry about who she is as a person or what that means for her as a patient. So yeah, you know, so I'm there like reminding them with my life and my just drive and energy and all of that and effervescence to just go, yeah, mate, like, you know, people have fights left in them when you don't think they do. And so that's me every day, just trying to enjoy it and eating a lot. I'm enjoying eating. Really, food is so good because until you can't, you know what I mean, like you just got to enjoy it. So I can feel my stomach gurgling now now that I'm talking about it.
Well, tell me what hope means for you today.
What does hope mean? I don't know if I can sum it up because it's just, you know, being able to go to sleep and knowing that I will wake up and be okay and there's unlikely something to be happening in the night. Like, and again, like I do all my like, oh, I'll touch wood and I'll do like the silly little superstitious things because sometimes hope has just been like the last thing I've got. And so hopefully I'm touching wood and hopefully I'm doing this. And I can hope for holidays. And I think that's what I use hope for, is it's always like I hope I can do this. I hope that this, and it's the language I use around it rather than it thinking of it as like a term, you know, like a thing. It's just I make sure it's in the language I use, like, oh, I hope I can do that, because it just makes me a bit more present in the way of doing it. And like I know we spoke a bit about clinical trials and like the advocacy of and again, like on another note, the advocacy for others when you can't, like, you know, if I was complaining about something and feeling uncomfortable because I don't want them to have my care reduced because I've complained, but then that complaint might mean that someone else doesn't experience what I did and they get a better care as a result. With clinical trials, you know, I hope access should not be a barrier to hope, and I think that is the case for the whole of cancer and life really as well, is just access to anything, even if it's your own mental well-being. And so I'm enjoying my mental state being what it is, so that I'm not being my own barrier to hope, you know, which can happen when you're just so mentally down and fatigued, you just lose it.
Well, and you've told me but previously, and I know from a lot of what I've seen in your celebrity work,
there are definitely better ways to become famous, even in my
you're famous in my book. And but I think it's come from having hope that your story and what you've gone through can help someone else. And you've done so many campaigns and efforts to support the organizations that have supported you and raise awareness and to talk about your advocacy work, because it's really inspiring.
I've done a lot with Teenage Cancer Trust, and I think I don't really know how it started. I think the reason it started was because of Luke and our relationship. I remember they wanted me to do a piece on, and it's still on their website. I think it's called getting married in the face of getting married in the face of adversity, incurable cancer or something. But we were the Valentine's edition, so I did it was a massive bit about our wedding and getting married, and then it was a lot, you know, then again about me as experiencing cancer. And so that was a piece I did, and then I think they just kind of went, oh my god, she's a really good writer, that's a really good voice to have. And so I did a few more pieces, and then the Royal Albert Hall, obviously a very famous place, Teenage Cancer Trust have funding for a lot of obviously youth group activities, and one of them is the backstage experience. And so it'll be a whole week of cancer gigs, and it's all charity led, and it was originally started by Roger Daltrey from The Who. Now it's been taken over, and it was done by The Cure this year. But I went and did the backstage experience, and you go along and it's a whole day of just going, you know, being toured around backstage, and then you have the show. And it's not, I've been to the comedy night each time, which has been really fun because obviously it's great to see and meet the comedians. And then the following year was actually the 50th anniversary of Domino's and TCT's partnership, because Domino's, you get a massive discount for patients and nurses, but they also, like, you know, provide a load of pizzas to different events and stuff. And they asked me if I would speak and basically do another spoken bit about me, but they were like really hammered in, like really, like, we want these people to know like exactly what having cancer is like and how crap, but you do it so eloquently, kind of thing. And so I was on this little stage with a tiny little microphone in this tiny room, and there were loads of hors d'oeuvres being served, and I was kind of like, oh, I really, really want that, like beef croquette, but I'm here with a mic. And that was amazing. And then again, that was like word-led stuff. And I think I was very lucky who my youth support coordinator was, which again is a role funded by the NHS, and you're very lucky if you have one in your hospital, because it's definitely not it's definitely not nationwide, what everyone experiences. And I've been very lucky. And I say that because she then left that role and went into this group and became the lead of this group called the Youth Advisory Group, which is what I'm a part of now. And I remember saying like, oh, I've done my interview, so I really hope I get in. And she was like, no, you've got it. And I was like, no, I know, I'm hoping I do. And she was like, no, you've got it. And I just couldn't understand. She's like, that's my new role. I'm telling you, I'm taking you with me. And so she's just scooped me up and just gone, Verity, you're coming along for the journey. And it's been so nice that she's specifically her has seen something in me to give back. And so then for the Royal Albert Hall, I was after I came out of hospital last year, obviously she was a big part of why I had my film made. And I was like, 9 years in the making. Yes, I finally get my film, because I've known so many people that have done one. And I was like, yes, I get to do it. And then they asked me to obviously speak at the Royal Albert Hall this year, and it was again the 26th golden birthday. And I was like, right, if you don't do it, the worst they can say is no. But if you don't do it, like, it's never going to happen. Take life by the balls. And so I did, and made them sing Happy Birthday, and it was brilliant. And then David Attenborough had his 100th birthday there, and everyone sang Happy Birthday to him. And I was like, I did it first, David. Actually, I did it first. But yeah, I've been the campaigns I've been involved with have been great, and like lending my voice, especially as a youth-led group, where, you know, you are helping to shape the policies of the charity. And even just when it comes to what the brief is for the ads that they send out for the YSC roles, like, we're going, that's not important, this is, you know, like this bit is, like, rewrite this so it's better. That's not important to us. That can be, you know, it can be in the brief, but just at the bottom, like, we're able to tell them what it is from our experience, and what we're missing, and what bridges and gaps need to be made. And I just spent a weekend in Manchester during a heat wave. Luckily there was a lovely aircon room we were in, but I did kind of miss out on the sun. I was like, it's Saturday and Sunday and I'm doing work. But I just had a whole weekend, and it was residential, and I just felt so privileged to be alive and to be there, because the last year I missed it because I wasn't well enough, and I was still in that, like, you're gonna die phase. And so to just sit in this room of people going, I'm alive, not only that, I'm thriving as best as I can, to the point that I'm able to travel like 4 hours and stay this whole weekend. And it's just been brilliant. And being a part of something bigger than yourself, you know, we're all in the faith. Hold on a sec, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to say it's a quote because I'm not going to pretend that it's me coming up with this right now. My brain's fried. But you know, we're all on equal footing when measured against the size of the universe, and I like that. You know, we really are. But you can be bigger than yourself when you're doing like big things with the, you know, unifying others. And like, you know, unity is important as advocacy in patient-led care and getting diagnosed young, I think, at any age, but especially when you're young. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And then I've just been on little billboards on bus stops, my face, campaign, fit picture, just for the last few months, which has been really fun, going around in a car going, that's me. So yeah, little bit of fame, touch of fame.
I think that your story is amazing, and I love seeing all the things you've done. I've watched all of your interviews. I've watched the Roy Marsden video. I'm going to link them all in this story so that everyone else can see them as well. And I was one of the last question I was going to ask you was, what would you say to someone starting out in the fight against DSRCT? But I want to adjust that a little, because I want you to talk about something that you've talked about throughout, which is holding multiple realities at the same time. Like this experience makes us learn how to hold hope and fear in the same sense, how to hold pain and joy in the same experience, right? And so in talking about that part of what you've learned, what would you tell 17-year-old Verity?
That we're not fairies, and that every single emotion is valid. Not just, we're not just like tiny enough to just experience one. Like, you are bombarded by information that makes you feel one way and then another way a moment later. Like, every emotion is valid, be it like anger or gratitude or fear, or like just you have to compartmentalize so much, but just sometimes you need to just be present with yourself. And I think I would tell myself, you've got to be the best you to live with for yourself, because it's a very lonely journey when you're not in the right, when you're not enjoying being in your own head. And so protecting your mental health is probably the most important thing, because they're going to be physically at you and like reducing you to just the size of a pea in their data, and making you, like reducing you as a person, and physically, like the physical aspect is, the mental aspect is just as important. So if you're not looking out for your mental health, who is? And so I think I would tell her, I was like, just be the space that you want to live in, and feel everything that you possibly can, because you don't know how long you're going to have left to feel it, basically.
It is amazing to hear you talk. Like, you're just so wise, so much perspective, so much confidence and clarity for someone who has been through so many things that most people can't fathom. And it is a gift for me to get to share your story. So I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. It's been, I think it's cathartic every time I get to speak about it in this way, and have this space. So thank you for providing me the space to do that, because it isn't always an option for everyone to kind of sit down and go, hold on a sec, what have I been through, and process that. And so these spaces are just as important as any. So thank you very much. And I've actually really enjoyed it. As horrible as it is, kind of recounting stuff, and again being in that point where I'm like, hold on a sec, I don't even remember that. What happened, Mum? It's been invaluable for, again, just processing. We all process at different speeds. I'm still processing stuff from last year, and this just helps me get on my way a little bit. So thank you. It's been good.
Well, and as you have a big, wide story, right? You've experienced many things, but like, you've been through so many things, but also like your spirit, there's no container to fit that large enough.
I think a lot of, my mum's spoken to people. We're very lucky, with the youth spaces and within our hospitals. We've got reflexologists and masseuses and fun things. But my reflexology is very spiritual, and she's a lovely woman. And she said to my mum, I think one of the main reasons that Verity's not gone anywhere is because her spirit's not been broken. And I think actually, that is so important, because there have been times where I have been at my limit. And again, like I've said, I just want to die, because it was all I could think to process it. But in the moment that's resolved, I'm like, back. That was all I needed. All I needed was just some respite, and someone gave that to me, and I was able to go, right, okay, cool. We're back to basis, guys. Let's go. And so I think, spirit is just as important as anything. There are so many things that are important, but I think I don't want my spirit to ever be broken, because I think, what's the point then, really? So and my mum's hasn't either, and I think that's why we've got a very united spirit.
Well, thank you. I'm so sorry that my video has been going in and out. Right now it's not seeming to want to come back this time. So I think that means that this is a good place to end the video, but
Yeah.
I am so grateful